The smell of fresh paint and pencil shavings filled the brightly lit classroom as the crowd of parents murmured around the art displays. Ethan Cole stood quietly in the corner, his calloused hands clutching a small paper flower his daughter had made. He wasn't used to these kinds of gatherings. Parents dressed in fine suits, luxury handbags hanging off their arms, polished shoes that didn't know the meaning of dust. He stood out. His jeans were faded, the sleeves of his shirt rolled up, oil stains clinging stubbornly to the fabric. To most, he looked like the janitor or a delivery guy who had taken a wrong turn. But he was just a father, one trying his best to show up for his daughter, no matter how small his world felt. What he didn't know was that fate was about to walk through that classroom door wearing heels. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in stories that touch the heart, please take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your support helps bring more true and emotional stories to life. As Ethan adjusted his posture and tried not to fidget, his eyes caught movement near the door. The room seemed to dim around the edges when she walked in. Grace Turner. She looked every bit like the woman the world would call untouchable. A fitted white blouse tucked neatly into a slate pencil skirt, long brown hair cascading over her shoulders, and eyes that carried both authority and a quiet sadness. Parents straightened when she passed, teachers smiled too brightly, and whispers spread quickly. That's Grace Turner, CEO of Turner Dynamics. But for Ethan, time didn't move at all. He wasn't seeing a CEO. He was seeing the girl who used to share sandwiches with him under the old oak tree in high school. The girl whose laughter once filled his entire world before life pulled them apart. Back then, she was Grace Miller, the girl who dreamed of becoming someone who made a difference. Now she stood across the room, successful beyond measure, and yet, somehow, she looked like someone still searching for something. Grace hadn't planned to attend the parent-teacher night herself. Her assistant had arranged everything. But when she saw her daughter Lucy's drawing hanging on the school bulletin, two stick figures holding hands with the caption, "Me and Dad," something in her cracked open. Lucy had never met her father. He'd left before she was even born. But Grace wanted her daughter to know family, to know connection. She didn't expect to find a ghost from her past standing under the fluorescent lights, looking both humbled and heartbreakingly familiar. Their eyes met across the room. For a second, everything fell away. The chatter, the laughter, even the noise in her own mind. Grace felt her breath hitch. Ethan froze where he stood. It was like seeing a reflection of all the choices they never made, all the words they never said. When the teacher began her presentation, Grace sat near the back, but her gaze wandered to the side of the room where Ethan knelt beside his daughter, helping her rearrange her artwork. His gentleness with the little girl stirred something old in her heart. It wasn't the grand gestures or the charm she noticed. It was the quiet care, the kind that doesn't need to be shown off, the kind she remembered falling for years ago. After the meeting ended, Ethan tried to leave unnoticed, but his daughter, Mia, tugged his sleeve. "Daddy, can we show my flower to Lucy's mom? She said she likes flowers." Grace turned at the sound of her daughter's name. Their paths collided before he could avoid it. "Grace," he said softly, his voice carrying disbelief. "Ethan," she breathed, barely managing a smile. "It's been a long time." The awkward silence that followed held years of lost moments between them. Grace glanced at Mia, who was proudly holding out her paper flower. "Your daughter made this. It's beautiful," she said warmly. "She's the artist, not me," Ethan replied with a quiet chuckle. "I just buy the glue." Grace laughed, a sound he hadn't realized he'd missed until that moment. But before either could say more, a parent called her name, and she was swept back into her CEO world, leaving Ethan standing there with a bittersweet ache in his chest. That night, after putting Mia to bed, Ethan sat by the window with an old photo in hand, him and Grace, high school prom night. They were just two kids then, promising forever before life had bills and responsibilities. He wondered if she even remembered that version of them, before titles and broken dreams. The next morning, while repairing a client's car at his small garage, Ethan heard the sound of expensive heels clicking against the concrete. He looked up and nearly dropped his wrench. Grace stood there, sunlight catching in her hair, holding a cup of coffee. "You still drink it black, right?" she said, smiling softly. He blinked. "You remember that?" "I remember everything," she whispered. The conversation that followed felt both strange and natural. Grace explained that her company's vehicles were serviced nearby and she thought she'd drop in personally. But Ethan knew better. This wasn't business. This was unfinished history. As days turned into weeks, Grace found herself returning more often than she needed to. Sometimes with an excuse about a company van, sometimes with coffee for two. They started sharing moments that felt impossibly familiar, like sitting outside on the garage steps after closing hours, watching the sky fade into gold. She'd talk about her demanding world of board meetings and endless travel, and he'd share stories about Mia's school projects or how he was trying to save up for a bigger place. Grace realized that in all her success, she had lost something real, something she once had with him. She saw in Ethan what the world had forgotten: simplicity, sincerity, and love that didn't need an audience. But the road to second chances is never smooth. The whispers began almost instantly. Tabloids spotting her at a mechanic shop, her assistant questioning her priorities, even her company's board growing uneasy. Grace was suddenly reminded of the walls between them, her empire, his modest life. The world wouldn't understand. One evening, she found herself sitting in her luxury office staring at the city lights. Her assistant had just warned her, "Grace, if this relationship gets public, it could cost you your reputation." She looked out the window, remembering Ethan's hands stained with grease and love, remembering how Mia had giggled in the park as he pushed her on the swing. Reputation suddenly felt like such a small thing compared to what she might lose again. Meanwhile, Ethan was fighting his own storm. He didn't want to be the man who complicated her life. He'd seen the articles online, the gossip, the sneers from her driver when she visited. He told himself she belonged to a different world now. But then Mia's words one night undid him. "Daddy, Miss Grace said you fixed her car, but did you fix her smile too?" The next day he went to her office, not to fix her car this time, but to say goodbye. The security guards eyed him suspiciously, his clothes marked with grease stains, but Grace met him at the elevator before they could turn him away. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" He took a breath. "You don't need to explain yourself, Grace. You've worked hard for what you have. I don't want to be the reason you lose it." She looked at him for a long moment, eyes glistening. "You think I'm afraid of losing what doesn't make me happy anymore?" Her voice cracked slightly as she stepped closer. "Ethan, I built everything people said would make me proud. But every night when the boardroom lights go off and I'm alone in that big house, I'd trade it all to feel like I do when I'm sitting on your porch, drinking cheap coffee, listening to Mia laugh." Tears blurred his vision. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope. Their story didn't end in grand gestures or luxury. It continued in the quiet ways love often does. Grace started spending weekends helping at the garage, her polished hands learning the weight of real work. Ethan, in turn, began helping with charity projects her company funded, using his skills to fix vehicles for single parents and families in need. Together, they found a balance between two worlds, hers of skyscrapers and his of small-town simplicity. Months later, during another parent-teacher night, Grace stood beside Ethan and Mia as they looked at a new drawing on the classroom wall. This time, it showed three figures: a little girl, her dad, and a woman with long hair labeled "Use." Grace felt tears fill her eyes as she looked down at Mia, who grinned proudly. Ethan squeezed Grace's hand gently, and for once she didn't care who was watching. If this story touched your heart, please don't scroll away. Like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal so we can continue spreading stories about love, hope, and second chances that remind us all what really matters. Before you go, tell us in the comments, do you believe true love can find its way back, no matter how far apart life takes you? Because sometimes, the heart doesn't forget. It just waits for the right moment to begin again.